for Ghana Tourism Authority. Let's have that.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm also an architect. So that's just to make that point. Right. Executive Chairman of Image Consortium, fellow professionals in the built environment, Honorable Secretary General of the Ghana Institute of Architects, Augustine Richardson, who is my friend, Ghana Association of Electrical Contractors, members of IET, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. It is my singular honor to be part of the 18th International Building Construction Exhibition and Construction Forum. The theme, Driving Tourism Through Culture, Architecture and Engineering, is apt since architecture, engineering and tourism have been interlinked since time immemorial. Architecture has been a major aspect of climb through, while tourism has been helped to sustain architecture in many respects. Ladies and gentlemen, tourism is one of the fastest growing industries and a major foreign exchange earner and employment generation for many countries, including Ghana. It is one of the most remarkable economic and social phenomena. United Nations World Tourism Organization defines tourism as people who travel to stay in places outside their usual environment for not more than one consecutive year for leisure, business, and other purposes not related to the exercise of an activity remunerated from within the place visited. Architecture is a means of expression for the cultural diversity and innovative potential of a country or region, and tourism as an industry directly helps to preserve architecture, engineering, and culture. Historically, temples have been built in honor of the gods, grand theaters, amphitheaters, stadiums, the colosseums, and other monumental public buildings that now attract large visitors as they represent the culture and society. In modern times, several architects, planners, artists, engineers have been working on reconstruction of old heritage areas of the cities. But the most important question that arises is what kind of architecture or reconstruction? Should it be in accordance with historical patterns and spirit of that area, or it should project the new and modern shapes and layouts with the modern framework? Architecture has always been the major source of attraction, be it heritage architecture or modern architecture, as in the case of Dubai and other modern cities. From the pyramids of Egypt, temples of ancient India, statues of liberty, to Bar Kahali, and all have been the identity of the place and weave the story of the time they were built. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, tourism and other tourism-related matters in Ghana is regulated by the Ghana Tourism Authority through the Tourism Act 2011. The object of the authority is to promote the sustainable development of the tourism industry both internationally and within the country. Section 3G of the Act enjoins the authority to ensure the management and development of appropriate designs for tourist sites. Section K of the functions of GTA also mandate the authority to develop standards and guidelines for designs for use at tourist sites, attractions, and enterprises to reflect Ghanaian culture. Ladies and gentlemen, out of these functions of GTA, 5 legislative instruments have been developed to regulate and ensure that the functions of GTA are adhered to by enterprises being regulated by the Act. The Tourism Registration and Licensing of Tourist Accommodation Enterprise Regulation 2016, as part of the furnishing of guest rooms, lodges, public spaces, requires that locally made wall hangings and other artworks and crafts are used. Local ones are used instead of foreign ones. Colleague professionals, it is ready to note that in this ruthless business environment and competitive tourism industry, the role of architecture and engineering and successful destinations. But architecture and fine buildings have been at the heart of international level. It is important therefore for Ghanaian engineers, architects, urban planners, artists to collaborate and collectively work together to create a conducive environment and those with deep-rooted cultural values which tourists would associate with them as truly Ghanaian. On that note, I would like to thank the organizers of the 18th International Building Construction Exhibition and the Construction Forum for inviting me to be part of this historic event. Thank you, and may God richly bless you. Let's do it better. Let's do it better. Thank you so much. Architect Echo Simpson. In fact, we have another speaker I need to, to escape me. I need to introduce him. His name is Mr. Sebastian Smith. He's an expert director, Lab Buffalo, Switzerland. Please, can you bring this? Let's do it better. Yeah. This international conference, so we have people from Switzerland. So now we move on to do the first presentation. And we are going to have the first presentation by Architect Augustus Richardson. Please, are you ready? Yeah. Please, I hope you take notes, and when after that we ask our questions. Okay? So just thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and indeed to the team at Image Consortium who have consistently, and I think this is your tech that you continue to do. It started as a dream and you've kept consistent for 18 years. Continue consistently. So congratulations to all of you, Ifawajetu and the team. There are two Erics at Image Consortium, Eric Asnodu and everybody too, and indeed the entire team at Image Consortium for continuing to sustain the discussion on buildings and indeed architecture. Let me also bring to the gathering and indeed the entire public that I speak to now because of COVID. There's also presence on the internet, so there's a lot of audience that's looking at us from within this room. Let me bring you felicitations from the Institute of Architects, the Ghana Institute of Architects, of which I am Honorary Secretary from President S.M. Kwoti. His greetings together with Council and indeed the entire membership. Ours is found in a time when we think that the topic which I'm about to speak to is most apt in moving us forward. And the topic that is given to us today is driving tourism through culture, architecture, and engineering. I tried to define some of these and then prefer certain positives and negatives of our current dispensation in the country that we find ourselves in. So, next slide, please. When I think about tourism, a series of images, if you like, come to my mind. So, Mr. Controller, the next slide. Right. So when I think about tourism, a number of images come to mind, a number of things come to mind. And tourism is very broad. So, in our local context, one of the first things you think about, for me, as an architect, maybe I think more spatially, so you think about the Coast Castle. Next slide. Still the Cape Coast Castle on the next slide. It's been a bastion of colonial rule. It's a very robust structure that has been there for years, and so it keeps very well. And a lot of, because of the slave trade, a lot of diasporan Africans returned to connect. There are a lot of them that were, sort of cut off from the root and do not know exactly where they're from. So if you are aware, globally right now, a lot of people are looking for where they are coming from. So it always brings people back to the country. Next slide, please. But when I also think about tourism, I think about independence, and I think about the great past. I think about the history that Ghana was strong in structuring in Africa, as being the first country that we find ourselves. Images, if you like. Right. So when I think about tourism, things come to mind. And talking about, for me, as a Cape Coast Castle on the next slide, a bastion of, I think about in Africa, architectural pieces that are, beginning to attract people. There are a lot of visitors who come to this place. To next slide, still the same, under the same discussion, structure that was designed. I think it was supervised by, forgotten the architect's name, doing well in system. I've forgotten his name, but his name will come back to me. And a lot of visitors also visit because they want to see Osagyefo, and sort of delve into what happened at the time. Next slide. Again, when I also think, next slide please, when I think about tourism, I also think about Oxford Street and the things that attract people to such locations. Next slide. Good. So, Obama Hotel, which is sitting right at the entrance of the Oxford Street. In fact, quite a number of tourists come through to Obama and they come to take pictures so that you're in Accra, you're rooted. But that whole Oxford Street is a discussion. And why it's also gained the moniker Oxford Street. So you realize that in all the images that I keep showing until now, it's about spatiality. It's about the occupation of space, buildings, and experiences. Next slide. Also, when I think about culture, I also think about traditions. I think about chieftaincy, and maybe the strongest chieftaincy system we have, without any disrespect to any, I'm a Fanti, so being that I did not cite the Fantis, I'm sure I will not be crucified. But the Ashantis, Asante Man has a very good structure for leadership and has always sort of led the way a number of these things. So a lot of people also travel into the country to go to Kumasi. I, as a student, used to go and sit at Menchia to watch the processes that they undergo. And very interesting processes that still have solutions for today. Deep culture, strong. So that's also something that attracts us to tourism and a lot of the people who come into the country, and indeed ourselves as local. Next slide. And maybe you say that looks like this political, but we're on the ground, so if I don't make sure that the gas I could be taken away from the very place. So the Ulama and the traditional custodians of the land that we find ourselves in today as Accra, all these things come to mind when you think about culture. And you think people travel all the way, just come and see cultural practices and traditions, executed so that they can understand where it is we are coming from. So with that sort of background and that imagery, you help me to delve into the first question, which is the next slide. What is tourism? I think, my senior ECHO, I hope you forgive me if I make mistakes, but I didn't try to define it myself. I went online to try and get the next slide after this. So the first question is, what is tourism? Well, we're about to talk about driving it using architecture. It's important to define what it is.
It is a commercial organization and operation of holidays and visits to places of interest. This is a global discussion. And like Echo said, and I will repeat, says tourism is the activities of people traveling to and staying in places outside their usual environment for leisure, for business and other purposes, for not more than one consecutive year. I think that one consecutive year will be important, else we end up becoming a story or somebody who stays in that country. Tourism is a dynamic and competitive industry that requires the ability to adapt constantly to customers' changing needs and desires, as the customer satisfaction, safety and enjoyment are particularly the focus of the tourism business. It's very important to try and understand exactly what it is. And it will then help you to ask the question, are we really encouraging tourism in this country? Is that what we're doing? But also, before you go to the next slide, which will ask another question, it's important to also get some statistics on tourism. And the way I do it, my approach is always to look at the extreme. What is the extreme and where do we stand as a country today? Today in the world, and information on Wikipedia, very straightforward, is that the best place for tourism in the world today is France. Tourism in France has directly contributed to 79.8 billion euros of the gross domestic product. We're talking about 2013. 30% of which comes from international visitors. 30%. Now, this is a very important statistic. That 30% of the product that is coming from international visitors and 70% from domestic tourism. Can you imagine that? We patronizing our own things and making money. I see that shift happening in Ghana in recent time. If you use the City FM, I think they visit those sites in the country, and that is to be commended. The total contribution of travel and tourism represents 9.7% GDP and supports 2.9 million jobs. That's 10.9% of employment in the country. This is France. So definitely tourism contributes to the balance of payments in the country as France. Let us sharply then relate that to the Ghanaian existence, where UNESCO places us out of 139 countries as one is. So we are comparing France with Ghana. France is at number one, producing gross domestic product at 79.8 billion. And let's get the statistics of Ghana. Ghana is also making good money. But relatively, Ghana is making 2.1 billion. Think about it. 79.8 and 2.1 billion. It means there's a lot of room for improvement. And there's a lot of money that we can make in this country. So tourism is a very important thing. I think it's important to get those facts so that we can delve in. Next slide. The next slide. So then, focusing on an understanding what tourism is. Now, let's also ask the question, what is culture? What is culture? Next slide after that. Culture is the characteristics and the knowledge of a particular group of people. It encompasses language, religion, cuisine, social habits, music, and arts. The word culture derives from the French term, which in turn derives from the Latin colere, which means to tend to the earth and grow, or cultivation and nurturing, or nurture. Go to the next slide. Culture appears to have become key in our interconnected world, which is made up of so many ethnically diverse societies, but also riddled by conflicts associated with religion, ethnicity, ethnic beliefs, and essentially the elements which make up culture. But culture is no longer fixed, if it ever was. It is essentially fluid and constantly in motion. So you see, it's a very important point to be made here that we seem to, as a country, be stuck in a place in the past where we think that culture is static. Culture is not static, and just thinking about your interaction with the internet today, mobile telephony. A few years ago, we didn't have, people on iPhones and Androids with access to the internet readily. Now, in the dispensation that we find ourselves, information is readily available to a lot of young and old people alike. So people get to experience and see things. Communication is much better. The question then is, how does that affect our culture as a people? Today, Ghanaians are, in times past, and I still do say today, not a lot of people, will travel abroad because, again, the dispensations for travel are not very easy. But today, who is the Ghanaian? A Ghanaian can be born in this country and have experiences globally and still live here, eat his steak and his fish. How do you define him? A lot of people have left it to an anachronistic existence. So if they want to see buildings in Africa, there is a thought that they should see, if it's not thatched roofs and it's not mud earth and there aren't Adinkra symbols on the wall, it is not Ghana. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but that is not the future that we are talking about. Culture is dynamic, and we need to respond to that dynamic nature and constantly be defining who it is we are as a people. So then leads on to my favorite area where I find great passion, what is architecture, so that we can have a proper discussion. But for this lecture, and we can go to the next slide, there are many definitions of architecture. There is the scientific, it's art and science of building. Not for this lecture. In this lecture, I'd like to focus on the fact that architecture is an intellectual endeavor. Now, let me explain what that means. What you see, even this space that we sit in, is the result of somebody's thinking. And so I pick this because if we see it as an intellectual endeavor, then it is not to be played with. Because the person is the space that we are in. It is Winston Churchill, former Prime Minister of England, who makes the statement that we shape our environment and the environment shape us. So architecture has power. If you put it in the hands of a novice and somebody who has no appreciation for history, has no appreciation for spatiality, do you know what you are doing? You're gonna kill the next generation. You're going to make sure that the next generation grows without belief. And I prove this. We all travel in one way or the other to foreign countries. And when you're landing in a place like France or most places in Europe, you feel the might of the state from the air. You feel it. When you are landing and you look at the way the space has been mastered at, and it's even worse when you get onto the street at human scale, when you're engaging. It's not a lot about them. Place in point Germany. The German, we talk about the German machine. They project their values, their cultural values, that they are about perfection. In Europe, if you ask a German to do work for you, most people will tell you they'll be there minutes before. Let's say we had a 2 o'clock meeting. They'll be there 5 minutes before 2. It is the culture, it is their way, it is something they pride themselves in. So then I ask myself the question, what is it about that? You tell somebody you're going to meet at 1, he's there at 3. And they call it African time, Mr. Moderator. Is that who we are? Really? Is that what we want to say about ourselves? Why is it that we are stuck in this place where everything that has to deal with squalor and everything that has to do with ineptitude and mediocrity is our portion? Is that the message we will give of ourselves? Is that our culture? Is that the way we are? Let's ask ourselves the question. Is that really who we are? But then again, I don't belong to that culture personally. I have no apologies for that. I don't want to belong to that culture. I think that everybody is born for excellence. And being late to meetings is not excellence. So I'm just picking one. So I think let's start from that intellectual path. Now, let me in order for a building to be sustainable, it must be loved. It must touch the soul. People, not just the current owners, but future generations, must find enough value in a building to continue to occupy and maintain it. So when you go to Europe, buildings are protected. Now, if architects or the people who are forming the environment do not think at the level of having the buildings have a soul, and that's a hard thing because the building doesn't seem like a living organism, but it actually is. So we scatter our landscape with foolish buildings, no apologies to anybody. Buildings that have no meaning, that have no soul, that leaves nothing in us, and we expect what? That we degrade society. Some of this is aesthetic, some performance, some economics. The Roman architect Vitruvius, who any well-meaning architect would have stated, says that a building gains the realm of architecture. It fulfills three things. Firmness, in Roman or Latin says firmitas. Firmness means that it must stand. And recently in Nigeria alone, a building collapsed and killed the very owner. Can you imagine? What is this? What are we doing in Africa? The building collapse on you when there are professionals who are supposed to do the work. Let's go further. Commodity. It must be useful. All right? And then one that if it doesn't have, it is not architecture. It's delight. It must take our minds. It must make us wonder about the human existence and where these people are from. So when I go back to a place like Egypt and I look at the pyramids, we never met the pharaohs. I remember as a child, when Ghana used to be the pharaohs of, their football team is the pharaohs of Egypt. And the kind of strength they play with. They remember that history and that's why they play with us like that. But we also the blacks, how have we understood that? Remember in our history, we won the African Cup 4 times. Where are we today? Why do you think we are not winning the African Cup? It is our mentality, it is our culture, it is a culture of mediocrity that has crept in. But that is not what Ghana is. So in that definition of architecture, and the next one, says that architectural design is at its basis ideological in the manner by which it may promote and enhance social positions and ideals. The design of our environment and the exception of some current, with the exception of some current trends, has largely been essential in defining our culture and subculture. So again, when we were speaking about culture sustaining architecture, but I posit that architecture sustains culture. Because if we understand what we are about to create, then we're able to create spaces that create a new culture. For example, if I create a public park that is conscious of the people who live within the community, the children will grow up in a certain way. I can tell you that people who've grown up, no disrespect to anybody, I didn't go to that school, so if I start it again, I'm not in fault. But if anybody is here who went to Achimota School, the people who went to Achimota School, everybody says, has a chip on their shoulder. Why? Because they work in the colonies of Achimota, and they belong to a certain culture, and they are made to believe that they are gods. This is not the first time this is experienced. When you go to Harvard University, it's the same. When you talk to the architects who built Harvard, they tell you that they built it as a place for the most intellectual people to work to. So when somebody goes to Harvard, you ask him where did he school, he just says Harvard. And it's with so much pride, because the space imbues something in you that you are a brain. So the question that I ask is that, if we understand that, then that's what we are doing. Do you think the buildings you are working in actually make you great? That's a question. Buildings may read relative to specific culture. Architectural design is a process in which the needs of society are erected in a built form which subsequently defines the goals of the society itself. So what I said about Winston Churchill comes to the fore. Society provides the cultural basis for design interpretation. So this comment is very important. A lot of us, and even those of us in this room, have the opportunity to build and influence the landscape. What do we do? What we do is we take images on Pinterest or something we've seen online in Europe. We go to your architect and we say, I want you to build this for me. That should stop. as a country that's a disgrace. Okay, if you want something in somebody's country, go and find the architect there to do it for you. Do not worry the architect in Ghana to do that. Your culture is not the same. Some of those buildings have small windows. There's a reason why they have small windows. They have small windows because in Europe they are saving themselves from the cold. We are here in Ghana with great weather for, I dare say, 12 months a year. There's no snow. Look, if it snowed in Ghana, multiples of people will die in this country without protection. But God being merciful, we're in the tropics. And what kind of buildings have we built? If you say these are hospitable, we are open people, but we are building closed buildings, really? Yes, in Copenhagen, in Denmark, it's a policy that even when you are walking on the side of the road, you can see a family having dinner. Why did they do that? Because they wanted to project that they are a very open society. It may not actually be the case, but that's what they're projecting. And their city planners ensure that this happens. So there's a disconnect. Let me move on to my next. And the first image, the Eiffel Tower, which you mentioned. People travel this world. I know people who had to marry, and to marry they flew all the way with supposed wives and gave them a ring under the Eiffel Tower. It's so romantic. But this tower was built by an individual with a wife. I'm positing something. A lot of the time we base it on government this, government that. No, it's not always going to be government. It's individuals. Individuals make the society. Businessmen. Gustav Eiffel puts up the Eiffel Tower, which has stayed there all these years and contributes to people who want to travel to the location just to go and see the power of engineering and architecture. So that's an example. Next slide. Still more details on the Eiffel Tower. And the next slide, please. The next slide. The essence of engineering and perfection is now becoming apparent. That is done, and people continue to travel. I didn't bring in the pyramids because we've always known the pyramids, but people still travel to Egypt to discover what the pyramids are about. Historically, archaeologists who study the past have not been able to tell us how the pyramids were built. In fact, it's led us to the point where people now believe that the pyramids were built by aliens, because they figure out how man did it. It then establishes to you that design has to be about, it has to be about something that makes us wonder as a society. So then I ask myself, is that what our buildings are doing? Is that what you think? Like when you see the truth is one. I believe the truth is one. When you see a building that has the energy, we agree. And yet we lie to ourselves in this community and this society with a very poor belief that later our environment. They're poor. And I'm saying this to the clients, to the consultants, to the government, to the policy makers. You know these funny buildings, and we expect that the world will rush in here. That's why we're making 2.9 billion only. I posited that against 79.8 billion. And it is possible for Ghana to get the next slide, please. I'm going from Eiffel, and I'm going to go straight to a latest building in Abu Dhabi. And I'm citing Abu Dhabi because that is serious society. Serious society. The people in the Emirates understand that they met and have received oil. They know that the oil will not always be there. So what they've done is they've invested that oil into real estate, into the environment. This building was by famous architect Jean Nouvel, French architect, who's built this as, this is the Louvre. The Louvre is a museum. And again, when you mention museums, you think about Ghana. Museums, so they built a new museum, and next slide. When you look at this museum, it is respecting Islamic architecture and culture, and yet it is projecting it in the future. It is telling us about the greatness of these people. Next slide. Is that what we're doing? Look at that. Wouldn't you want to go and see that? When you create shade, if you know the conditions in Abu Dhabi, it's hot. And yet they create this thing that makes you wonder. It took years to do it, but they did it because they knew what the world would do after this is built. The number of visitors alone is hitting 15 million plus, and if it continues, you're going to make a lot of revenue. So it drives the discussion, and you wonder, what are we doing in this country? Next slide. Personal pictures and recent visits to Dubai, where, the first is from the ground looking up at the Burj Khalifa, and those who've had the opportunity are going to look. But the pictures I'm showing is two of them. One of them is just asking a question. For those who read the Bible, we talk about, man being together and at a point trying to build up to God. That nature still exists in us. One man will continue to search to the highest limits. Do we not search to the highest limits in Ghana? Should we not search to the highest limits? It's man's endeavor. What are we doing? The Burj Khalifa, now it's been beaten, because there's competition in Dubai to beat the tallest building. And it's there as a tourist attraction. And people travel to go and see it. And then you go up to the lift, all the way to the top, and then you look down at the city. But when you look down, that second image, for me, is trying to tell us that we are in a very poor country. Look at how well planned that thing is. It's not going to happen by chance. It's going to happen if we master plan our city. And so I ask the question, do you know what Accra will look like in a few years? You don't. We're just going in the dark. What is government's part to do this? What is the individual's part to play in this? Government creates the framework and says we master plan this area. Government needs to work with its Institute of Architects. Why? Because architects are trained to do this. But that is not what we do. What we do is got friends and family and all kinds of things, and we do what we like in this country. It's not going to work. For sustainable development of our country and for us to move forward, it's important that institutions work sustainably along the way so that we can build a better country. So it is so important for us so that we can invite more people to visit us. And I'm not here to, next slide, I'm not here to talk about government, I'm talking about all of us because we all have a part to play. The next image you see has nothing to do with the built environment. Instead, it has a lot to do with my friends, the artists, and I'm very happy to see Amaka on the panel together with his daughter, who's happy to see an architect, but also an artist, very versatile. This is the work of a gentleman called Ibrahim Mahama, who is selling globally and touching the heart of many here and abroad. The kind of influence that Ghanaian art is having globally is amazing. There are great names today in the art industry who are Ghanaians. Now I start from art because it is from there that fluid thinking starts. And we must encourage the artists in this country to continue to think fluidly. Because when they do, the artists gain impetuses on how they create the new society. There's a need to search for originality. And that is what I think the artists are doing. So his work of art that is using the usual jute that you see in the market to now create new thinking. And to have new ways. So you would think it's trash, but he's using it to create a new narrative which contemporary architecture has held on to with its feet, not even its hands. Next slide. Next slide, please. Same artist in the picture, Ibrahim, standing before his work. And also the second one is him taking shoe boxes from shoemakers. And this work is featured in White Cube. White Cube is in London. The White Cube Gallery does not have you presenting your work still. They think your work is up to par and they want to present. It's still a society, intellectual society. And it's almost, for me, how it takes, what you say, the foolishness of this world to confound us. And the level of depth that his works are attracting in leading people to wonder what is art. What have we always taught artists? It's shocking the thought of what artists. And these are people who schooled in this very country. KMUST trained undergrad, KMUST trained masters, and he's doing his doctorate in KMUST. Very proud of people like this. Next slide. Next slide looks at even a greater one. A gentleman who plied trade in a time in this country when there was no place for artists, El Amatri. And El he's won the Golden Lion. If you know what the Golden Lion is, it's the highest prize for art in the world. It's almost like winning the Olympics as fastest runner. Next slide. El mostly in Nigeria and New York, and is best-selling. He makes art out of waste material. Tops of bottles. Go to the next slide, you will see the detail of what he says. So those are tops of bottles that he's made to create new tapestry. I'm citing these examples basically because the artists are leading the way in innovative thinking, and they are searching for what must we do as a people. I think that we need to move away from what has always occupied our minds as what building should be and start asking questions about our own environment, the issues of our culture. I'm saying we need to demand more from our architects. We need to demand more from ourselves. Next slide. The work I show is of Burkinabe architect Francis Kere, also globally known, won the Aga Khan Awards, doing amazing things. And these are buildings that he starts building in our rural communities, his rural community in Gando. And it's affected the entire southern belt of Burkina Faso because government is pushed to that. So the kids prefer to go to schools like this and not the unimaginative, boring structures that we put up for kids to go to school. Why should a school be like this? Do you know the impact it has on the children who are growing? They would think that they are great. Next slide, please. Next slide. One of the little schools he built where he's using simple ideas of the baby roof. If you know Gando and you've ever been to Côte d'Ivoire, you realize that the temperature there on the normal is sitting at 38, 40 degrees. In Ghana when it's 38, we say it's hot. On their side, 38, 40 every day, and it goes up. So the question for architecture then is how does architecture resolve the problem in rural communities to solve the problem? But he's going very much to the elementary questions. I think that's where we are. We need to start asking questions from an elementary point of view, and we need to engage creatives, we need to engage architects, and the entire community must critique what is coming. It is what the Institute has said, and we continue to say, and we will continue. We know it is not popular to the larger public and maybe the politician, but we will continue to cry that buildings that will come up that belong to this estate must be commented on by the very people of this country. Because if we're going to build something on the Independence Avenue and it is not worth being a building in Ghana, what business does it? You say, it's my money. Who told you that? It's not just your money. It belongs to the public realm. And it must be critiqued so that we create a better sense of ourselves. Because eventually, when we are landing in this country, the impression on the street will speak better of all of us collectively. It's no longer enough that you have a good building and somebody next door doesn't have a good building. Next slide, please. Further details on that and the different typologies he sort of created with this next slide. And the general use of local material, how that is fostering the discussion, because when you go to Gambia, you realize that there's a lot of use for brick. This is natural earth brick, which they cut with machines, and they use it to build these typologies that begin to elevate the spirit. Next slide. When you look at it in such harsh weathers, obviously, once he creates a lot of shade, a lot of people in the communities begin to sit in these areas. This is the work of intellectuals, certain social people, of which I belong, called architects. Is that what we're doing in this country? You want to build and you go and take no disrespect to those who work with us and have always supported us. Draftsmen, what are you talking about? Are you serious as a country? I'm talking individually to you, and I'm talking to government, and I'm talking to people who have to do serious things. Are we going to build a better country, or are we joking in this country? It's in our hands. I have faith that we will, because in my recent endeavor, just yesterday was one of them, I'm encountering people who are highly serious people to do things for them, because they realize that we cannot continue to exist in this state of dystopia. Next slide, and before my last slide. This by architect Issa Diabate, who I listened to yesterday at the African Futures Institute. So whether we like it or not, the society will move forward. I've established that it's an intellectual discussion. This country was not formed on small thinking. The thoughts of Osadrifu were ahead of its time. Regional integration really, and EU happened so many years after. What do you think? We have it within us as a people. If we understand who we are, I think that we will see the environment properly. I think that we will procure the right people to do the work. And when you go to an architect, he's going to work with engineers, serious engineers, from the mechanical and electrical plumbing side to make sure that it's being done well, from the structural side so that the buildings will stand, because like I told you in the beginning, architecture is about 4 meters. If the building doesn't stand, you failed. Any architect who has a building failing, he's finished. He should be disbarred from the institute. All right, so it works out for all of us. In good buildings, we procure the artists because now the rules are there, and I mentioned it that even it is now policy that we must patronize art in buildings. I dare say it shouldn't just be Ghanaian art. It should be art that fits to us as a people, and art is universal. The next slide, which leaves me at my last contributions, is how African architects are beginning to redefine the space. I don't want to only limit it to African architecture. Creativity does not reside in Stinkala. It resides, and later on today, you will hear from Hussein and maybe part of a larger discussion. We have to necessarily, as a country, engage competitions to select ideas. What are we afraid of? If you think a building is that good, put it up for critique. Let the public speak to it. Let the professionals speak to it. We know that if a building is good, we all agree it's a good building. We all agree. There's nothing here I've shown you that you will say to me, it's not a good building. It has the spirit, it has the soul. My encouragement to the panel and my challenge is that we need to rely on the right set of professionals to lead the process of creating the dream that will be this country. We all, like your building exhibition, will help build a better country, Madam Ufawajetu. And to your audience, those here and online, the suppliers, everybody, it is necessary. I've asked engineers, to query architects when they bring their drawings to them to say, is this really a good? I think we should. The fact, it's always about, is he going to select me to do it? If I right now, will he give me the job? What are you talking about? We all have to play a part in the suppliers are going to look at buildings and make good suggestions and say, well, we see a creative drive, but is this really us? Is this taking us there? I know it won't make you popular, but we must all understand that we are fighting towards a certain place to drive a unique society, a society that is looking again to now reinterpret what it must be, a continuously changing culture. My interest and what I'll leave you with is, for us to do it, think about this. Where would this be about us 200 years from now? Thank you very much. Let's do better, let's do better. Yeah.
Bring a chair here. Bring one here. Bring another chair here. Yeah, bring another chair. Just sit down. Yeah.
That's a very wonderful speech, and I think that we've all learned a lot from it. And at this juncture, I don't know what is running through your mind. So open the floor for questions, about 2 or 3 questions, and we'll move to the next one. These are very thoughtful lectures, and I've learned so much from it. But you did mention Taj Mahal from India. Yes, I have visited Taj Mahal. So it's also a very wonderful thing. Yes, sir. Please, just mention your name and you can just ask your question there. Use the mic. Press it.
Yeah, my name is Abesegu and I belong to the Ghana Electrical Control Association. There are some of the drawings that when we are given as contractors to work with, you realize that whether domestic, commercial, industrial, realize that, let me speak about the domestic and the industrial. You realize that a lot of drawings from our free architects, some of them, they don't even provide a switch room, which is also very essential in terms of any installation. This has gone on for several years, and whether the architectural bodies are aware of it. My second question also goes to the same project in terms of the domestic or commercial. You realize that some drawings or the design, realize that in terms of losses, in terms of losses, I also realized that they don't also, some of them don't also consider in their design. Because any building, whether locally or anywhere, let me talk about the tropical area that we are. For instance, we are in this room and then we see that air conditioners are on. But then in some of it, you realize that based on the way the settlement has been done, you realize that even when air conditioners are after the installation, when air conditioners are supposed to be installed, you realize that there are several losses in terms of, the performance of the compressors. So they must also look at this state, and then in their future designs, they must also consider providing the solutions, and then also look at the losses aspect as well.
Thank you very much, sir, for your comment, and it was in two parts. I love what you said. The Institute of Architects has advocated with government and local government at that for the past 12 years. I became secretary 3 years ago. And what we are telling the government is that we lack the capacity because your remuneration and attraction for people to work, no apologies. It's not good enough. I understand people at local government are earning 500 cedis a month to work. We can't put people through school for 6 years, do a further 2 years to get registered as architects, and to go for a paltry sum of 800. What is this society talking about? Let's be serious with ourselves. So we said to them that to help the various municipalities at the point of accepting permit drawings, let the Institute assist with its 1,200 membership and 200 plus companies that can vet the work. I must applaud the Ayawaso West constituency or municipality who have constantly, and I'm applauding them so that it's carried, they call the Institute. In fact, this morning I was supposed to be in a meeting, but this is more important. So I think I give them my comments on Monday. At least buildings going about 5 or 6 stories, they have certain meetings to vet them. So we are asking for a more expanded role because we realize that even for small homes, people are making basic mistakes like what you are mentioning. So the people who have put them there are draftsmen because they can take 500 a month or whatever it is they call. Obviously, it will end up in corruption because you can't live with 500 cedis in this country. So what happens then is that those people are the ones wetting the ground and it gets built. Do you know that in the laws of this country, there are supposed to be inspectors to inspect what you've drawn and what you have built? It's the way we are doing. The Institute has given solutions. We are saying that the MDAs should collaborate with the Institute, who has, I said, 1,200 including the debt. We will be able to support these bodies so that we can check these things and then we'll stop it. On to your second comment. You did mention something about creating a room and still the ACs don't work. Fantastic comment. It has become clear, and I don't want to mention buildings, but I can because they are sitting on our landscape. There are a number of buildings that are no longer occupied for this reason. There are buildings that have not been properly oriented. The glass faces rest without protection. And so the sun works very hard on it. And so we provided ACs. Here's the problem. ACs are supposed to work to cool a space. And I'm not the expert in ACs. You are here. But I understand that they're supposed to work to cool a space. And eventually the thermostats will give them a little bit of rest. And then they wait. Well, here's the problem. You can imagine if all this is glass. Design. And it's become imperative that we ensure that those who have the know-how to tell that you will see a building and say, oh, it's lovely. But in truth, it's